Aries, your tarot reading for January. Immediately drawn to the central card, an energy of nightmares. Lying awake at night with worry, maybe. What are you worried about? Because I can't see anything. And yet this runs throughout the entire reading. I suppose there's an indication in the past. Queen of Swords, firm but fair. Somebody that sets boundaries. What do you need to set boundaries against? Current energy, many blessings, probably including wealth. You are by yourself. Is that what's troubling you? I don't know. Your world is going to change, but that's normally very much for the better. Are you frightened of change? Are you worried about change? That's possible. You've been sort of investing for the future. Again, that's an indication of worry, isn't it? I mean, I'm not saying it's not good to invest for the future, but is that not an indication that you don't think the future's so good? Is that what's on your mind? What would change the outcome? And I'm not sure the outcome is bad, but you scoring some victories and public recognition for those victories. The outcome, as I say, I'm not certain it's bad. In fact, I think it's probably good. It's you doing more than considering options. You actually planning something of a radical future. Maybe planning moving overseas or something quite radical like that. We've got to get into this, haven't we? It's quite interesting, Aries. Now, is this simply worry, or is it nightmares? It's keeping you awake at night, so it could be simply worry. Why do I feel it's nightmares? I think there's something psychological about it. I think it's to do with you being worried about change, and often that's as much a psychological worry as anything else. My nightmares, when I remember them, are often about bureaucracy. They're often about being told off that, no, it doesn't go in that file, it goes in that file, you've got it wrong. I know, most of you are probably saying, what a crazy man, particularly at the age of 66. You know, when I went to the grammar school, we had a 2-week timetable rather than a 7-day. So, rather than a weekly timetable. So it was impossible to memorise. I think you could memorise a weekly timetable, but not a 2-weekly. So we had to write it on little pieces of card and in our books. And I regularly used to wake up in a cold sweat that I'd lost that timetable. I think that's exactly the sort of thing we're talking about here. And this runs throughout the entire reading, Aries. Now, whilst I think this is sort of psychological, I'm not wishing to suggest that you've not experienced problems, not experienced betrayal, because we all have. And if you look in the past, I suspect that you were putting up boundaries, because you have been deceived in the past. You have been taken advantage of in the past. And therefore you've had to put up boundaries. So I think those things do feed into this nightmare as I see it. But I think it's much more about a general feeling of change, and that the direction of change is not a positive one. Now, I think many of us have exactly that fear. But what I've realised is the only way to overcome that fear is to allow it to be fleeting and to accept that change is coming, but it can be changed for the better, beginning with us. And you see, I'm saying, what have you got to be fearful of? And your current energy is that of blessings, probably including wealth. And that's certainly my current situation, blessings of wealth, and yet I'm extremely worried about finances. And it's somewhat illogical, isn't it? And maybe, this energy is also about being by yourself. And maybe that's more your worry than the wealth bit. But I still think it's pointing to the fact that actually this is a case of worry for the sake of worry. We don't have the moon card here. We don't have worry of the unknown. But that's very much the feeling I'm getting. You see, you've got these blessings here, so why do you end up nightmares? It's got to be psychological, isn't it? Got to be. You have the Wheel of Fortune in the future. So there's definitely change coming, and I think you're aware of it. But it's generally speaking change for the better. It could be karmic, and you could be worried about karmic retribution, but again, you don't have anything to worry about. You really don't. Well, that's what worry is, isn't it? Worry is for the sake of worry. It's a prayer for things to go wrong. My mother was a terrible worrier, and she infected me with it and has left me with a karmic, and I'm sure it goes back generations, but she's left me with a karmic issue to resolve that involves this worry, and it's worry for the sake of worry, I wonder if that describes you. I'm not sure it does, Aries, but my mother was an Aries. I'm not sure it does describe you, but you are aware of these changes, and I think subconsciously you're rejecting them, even though I see them as probably entirely positive. Now, the energy that leads to the outcome is you saving for the future. And how can you possibly say that that's a bad thing? Only if you interpret it that you're worried about the future. And I do interpret it that way, but I don't want to say it's a bad thing. But I'm getting this overwhelming feeling that you should submit to the universe, God, Allah, a bit more and stop trying to control it. And that was very indicative of my mother, who, as I said, was always a worrier. She wanted, before she died, to tell me about how she'd interfered with my every loving relationship. But she could only bring it in her heart to tell me about one, and even then I didn't grab at it, so she didn't get the chance to tell me as much as she wanted to. And I wasn't being cruel to her, but, you know, she wanted to tell me how she'd lost me, one of my early girlfriends, and that if only she hadn't have done that, then I would have ended up very happily with this particular girlfriend. And maybe I would have, you know, but I'm very happy with my wife, you know. Now, not that I would reject this particular girlfriend for this reason, but, you know, I've got a very beautiful, very, very beautiful wife. One of the most beautiful women in the world, and I'm not lying here, you know. I mean, she's nearly 50 now, and she is putting on a little weight, although she's doing exercises every day. But the point is that this particular girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, is massively overweight. Now, as I say, you know, I would love the person for the person, but, you know, my mum coming out with this to try and get out of me that, well, I would have been better off with her, and yes, she was wrong to have interfered, you know. So, what am I saying? Look, it can't be wrong to save for the future, can it? It can't be wrong to have plans. It's just your motivation for it that might be wrong. And I think, you know, where I'm coming from, I think the universe is agreeing with me. Not about my mother, but about this. Don't try and control too much. Go with the flow. Live for the day. It's saying, look, you're already, right now, scoring some victories, getting public recognition. Focus on those little things. Don't focus too hard on the future. Let life, take life as it comes. Submit. I'm sure that's what he's telling you. And I'm sure that the universe, God, Allah, is giving you these little victories so that you learn from that. But you're not, are you? You're not. You're not releasing the past. This saving for the future, which I don't want to say is the wrong thing, it's the sort of psychology and attitudes behind it that I feel somehow might be wrong. This saving for the future leads you to planning a radically different future, planning something very different. And this is action planning. It's beyond just considering possibilities. This is you saying, okay, how would I achieve this? How would I go about doing it? And, you know, none of this matters. None of it matters. But we have had this card of either worry or nightmares. And I think that is it, that you're a little bit too controlling. You know, planning things a little bit too hard. You know, you might even shout back at me about the law of attraction, which, as you know, I'm a little sniffy about. Doesn't mean to say it doesn't work. But the way it works is about defining the feelings you're going to have, not defining the objective or monetary values, if you see what I mean. I think we need some clarity, but I'm sure I'm on the right track on this one. I'm going to seek clarity on this nightmare or worry, or lying in bed awake at night, let's put it that way. What's it all about? Because that really has informed what I've interpreted so far. And I think rightly so, because let's face it, it's the central card. So the first one is the Empress. Wanting the best in life, not only for yourself but everybody. In tune with nature. The next card is the Two of Wands. An important decision to make. You're having to take a decision. Now, given that this worry is in the future, is it related to the action planning, that you've not taken a decision before planning, or is this something else? I don't know. And then finally, we have the Knight of Swords. Very bold, very brave, very fast moving, but tends to jump to conclusions. I think that is very important. So let's look at each of these individually. So yeah, remember we're looking at what is making you lie awake at night. And the first card we get is the Empress. Now, this is a lovely card. Someone in tune with nature. Somebody that understands their motivation and those of others. I'll just throw this out. I don't think it's got anything to do with it, but it can mean pregnancy. I don't think that's what you're worried about, but I'll just throw it out. What I think more so, she's someone that wants the best in life, but wants it for everybody. And I think what you're lying awake at night worried about is you're wanting things. You're wanting to control things and you don't think that you're in control. Remember my dreams about sort of bureaucratic things, my timetable and that. And I think it's that sort of a thing, that you've got these desires and you don't think you're going to be able to fulfill them. Now we've got the Two of Wands. Well, remember we've had a Three of Wands about you sort of action planning, and this Two of Wands is sort of before that, you considering the options. So it's, again, I think you're lying awake at night about worried, will you be able to do what you want to do? And I think the whole message in this is to just relax a bit, to put it in the hands of a higher being, I call that higher being Allah. You might want to call it God. You might want to call it the universe. I'm not bothered, but I think you need to give up a little of this desire for control. And you see, you are brave, you are bold, you are fast, but maybe too quick to jump to the wrong conclusions. It is about worry, isn't it? This is like my mother. She could turn a wonderful situation into something to worry about. And that's what I think you are. Yeah, that's what you are. And this is a lovely little warning from the universe about that. I think we can summarise for you, Aries. Aries, forgive me for interpreting it this way, but This January spread seems to be about my mother, or her personality. She was an Aries, but she could turn a wonderful, happy situation into something that created anxiety and worry. Yes, she worried about everything, turned everything into a worry, into a concern. And I think, unfortunately, that's you. I mean, in the past, you have put up boundaries to things, and maybe it was appropriate to have those boundaries. But again, thinking of my mother, she was so cautious of everything. So cautious of everything that really she did nothing. Right now, you're being very blessed in many ways. Maybe you're all alone. Maybe that's something to be concerned about. But I don't think it is. I think you're just being blessed. Maybe you know that your world is going to change in the future, but that change should bring about good luck. But I think just as my mother would interpret change as bad luck, so are you. You're saving for the future. Now, there's nothing wrong in saving for the future. But again, a warrior would turn this saving for the future into having to save for the future, because the future will be dark. And this saving for the future leads you to planning massive change in your life. There's no harm in planning this change, but it seems to be a defensive plan, you know. You seem to want to control too much of your life, rather than simply submitting. And, you know, I think whether you call the higher being God or Allah or the universe, it really doesn't matter. But they're giving you signs that you should release more to them, because you are winning some victories and getting public recognition. And if only you could live more for the moment and release the future to them, your life would be so much happier. You call the higher being